Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from DeltaCX.com. We're a full service CX and UX agency and trainers. Come on and check us out. And today is the day everyone waits for every month. It's office hours, Ask Us Anything with our special guests. And Nick is asking me to send him the link. Sure, Nick. Sure, I'll copy and paste that while we're live on the air. Won't you all please hold while I give Nick a link to actually get here. So let's see if that will do it. So that means we're going to start with Darren and add Nick in when he shows up. So this will be 2 Musketeers until 3 Musketeers show up. But I also want to remind everybody quickly that we are still holding the summer giveaway. You can enter for free at deltacx.link/giveaway. I'm not putting you on a mailing list or anything. I just want one lucky person to get this summer a giant box of treats from Italy that I will buy and send to you myself, probably worth about $100. So make sure that you can receive packages from Italy before you enter because, man, that's expensive to have that package come back. That being said, let's bring in Darren and start to learn who he is, and then we'll get Dr. Nick in here as well. Dr. Nick, you seem to be with us. Let's test. Are you with us?
Yes, I am. Hello. Good evening.
All right. Well, let's start with Darren introducing himself and then Nick introducing himself. And remember, everybody, this is Office Hours Ask Us Anything. So start the questions coming in the YouTube chat or the LinkedIn chat or at the link at the top of the screen, deltacx.link/ask. So, Darren, who the heck are you?
Hi, everybody. My name is Darren Hood. I am an experienced design professional. First gen, started doing this work back in '95 before it was called UX. I hear some funny noise.
I do too. I was just going to check if that's your audio or Nick's audio.
I hope I'm not getting any feedback. So I turn my mic down a little bit just in case something's going on. But at any rate, started doing what we now call UX. I started doing the work back in '95. Fell in love with the discipline, and today now I've been working all the way up to Fortune 50, fortunate enough to pretty much usually be at the top of the food chain. I just think it's relevant to mention that on today. Just happy about that. I'm a professor at Kent State University, a professor at Lawrence Tech University, where I teach UX related courses. I'm also a brand new, what do they call it, corporate faculty member at Harrisburg University in Pennsylvania. Thanks to Debbie for helping to get me in on that one, and excited about
what's her name
there.
No, who got you in there?
Yeah,
that wasn't me.
She actually tagged all of us to ask what we thought about it, and I just happened to turn around and see it and chimed in and had a phenomenal conversation with the person in charge of the program there. So I opted in because I think they want to do great things, and they're going to be increasing the number of great things that they're doing over there. So I was pretty excited to become a part of that. But at any rate, that's me and my little bookie thingy here. I might as well throw this up. I always forget to mention this, but the 97 things every UX practitioner should know, I'm in there, and my podcast. So anyway, that's me.
Okay, thank you. And John, we saw your question. I've added it to the list. Dr. Nick, tell us about you.
Hi, guys. Is the feedback coming from me? Is that okay? Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, but the feedback is coming from you.
Fine. Here's what I'm going to do. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to reconnect using the built-in laptop stuff. It's probably better than these. Apologies. I will be right back.
Yeah, just make sure you are wearing some headphones so we don't get me coming out your speakers. And meanwhile, I will switch to my version of me and Darren while Nick sorts himself out. So, hi, Darren. You're welcome back. Let's start with the first question. Or, Nick, is your audio working?
Okay, can you hear me now? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
That seems to be better. Nick, introduce yourself, then we'll get to the first question.
Great. Apologies. I'm not at home at the right now. My name is Nick, Dr. Nick, known as Dr. Nick. I'm the founder of UX Psychology, and I'm a 10-year UX pro or 20-year HCI pro. I'm an a psychologist who does HCI, who does UX, and I pride myself on being, I hate to use the word expert, but a senior or a lead practitioner. I've been in practice now for 10 years. And so that means I'm the guy who's actually delivering the work. And that's a really important role these days. But that's me in a nutshell.
All right, thank you. I'm going to roll over and turn on my fan. So what I'm going to do is while I turn on my fan is and Charlene says hi, I'll read the first question and then I will roll over and turn on my fan because I'm connected by earpiece. Okay, the first question is, I want to understand what is the difference between research and testing, if there is, what's the value in each, and how do we know which to do when? Who wants to talk about research versus testing? Darren is giggling. I'm giving it to you while I turn on the fan.
Oh, you are? Okay. Yeah. I thought Dr. Nick was going to start that off. I know Dr. Nick's going to have some great stuff to say about that, so I'm just going to say a piece. The first thing I think about when I hear that question is that I want it to be more specific. That's the first thing I think about.
We do get some vague questions sometimes.
Yeah. Then you say testing, and I'm thinking the first thing I thought was, well, what kind of testing?
Right.
Because there's a lot of different types of testing. So I'm just going to put it this way. Research is a big animal, first and foremost. A lot of times when people say research, I have literally seen people say, do you like the green button or the blue button? I mean, we say this as a joke, but it actually happens. And then the person told them, well, I like the green button. And they asked about 5 or 6 people this, and they literally came back and told us that they did research. I actually made a comic strip out of it. It was so ridiculous. That's not research.
I'm coming, and Elizabeth.
I love the book. I can't remember the name of the book, but they talk about design principles. And they said there are 125 different methods, methodologies, techniques, deliverables, all feeding into research. So when a lot of people say, like when people say UX, you don't know what they mean until you talk to them. When people talk about research, you don't know what they mean until they elaborate. I mean, what are you really getting at? Are you talking about formative? Are you talking about summative? Are you talking about qualitative? Are you talking about quantitative? Are you talking about mixed methods? So research is a huge arena, and research should provide you with actionable data that will either inform, thinking about formative and summative, it's either going to inform what you're doing or it's going to validate what you're doing, more of the summative type of an approach. So research should always be involved. It's going to vary depending upon where you work, what the time frame is, what the budgets are, how much research and the types of different methods you can use will vary. And then you have to develop the skill. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I'm sort of shocked sometimes with all the people, I want to get into UX and I think I want to do research. Well, the less you know about UX, the less you're going to be effective when it comes to research, because you're not going to know what to research or how to conduct the research. And you're certainly not going to know how to apply strategy to your research approach if you don't understand UX from a broad perspective. So just some different things I thought I'd throw in about that. And there's usability testing. There's UAT testing, which is a completely different animal that different people do. So when somebody says testing, I like to hear more specifics about that. But that's what I'll throw in and hand it off to Dr. Nick.
Dr. Nick.
It's a good question, because in my mind, I've been thinking about this one a lot recently. I mean, in my world, in British user research, and I say British because that's just our market. I can't speak for any other. I imagine it would be fairly similar. I think we're probably further ahead than the rest of the world. Especially in government, you're looking at 2 kinds of user research. Discovery, which is what I think you're calling research, and testing, which is testing a prototype, what I call user testing. I also call it validation, but that's an awful word and it is just a misnomer. But that's when you've got a thing and I'm actually testing it rather than I'm learning about a thing. Me, as a behaviorist, as a psychologist, I'm much more of that user testing guy. But our world has changed so much in the past 5 years, and there's so much bleed over from business analysis and market research and all other kinds of things that we're being asked to go discover and do lots more discovery type work. In government, that's absolutely standard, because that's part of the dabble, the discovery, alpha, beta, live progress. You don't just build stuff, you go and learn about it first, and then you don't have a thing to test. However, in a truly agile environment, for which they are truly rare these days, doing discovery, i.e. learning what I'm building or learning that function or that feature or that bit, and then somebody builds it and then you test it, is gold. So, I mean, that's any user researcher, in my mind, wants to work into that space where you're comfortable in a discovery discovery activity, as well as what I'm calling user testing activity, where you're prototype testing or code testing. You've got a thing to test. So that's the big difference in my world. Most working user researchers in the world today, that's all that's all you should get asked to do. How you do it, different story altogether, and then that's all the stuff that Darren's just been talking about. But that's basically it in a nutshell.
Yeah, thanks to both of you. I think for the question we've been asked, there certainly is no short answer about what's the value in research and what do we do when.
Right.
This is just the kind of thing that people are going to have to learn over time and practice. It's just there's too many methodologies and approaches for us to just be like, hey, there's a thing and it's got value. Yeah, Nick.
One super important thing is that everybody's getting sucked into the kind of the academia of it. And whilst that's a beautiful thing, and it's hard to disagree with formalizing and understanding your research activity, people are getting they're over-focusing sometimes on the methodologies rather than what are you really trying to achieve here? And they get stuck in in research strategy land. Am I doing ethnographic? Am I doing contextual? That's naivety, and you've got to speak to your senior or your lead because it should be clear as day or pretty, shouldn't be difficult. Don't worry about getting a bazillion and one methods under your belt because, frankly, that's like having a toolbox with 20 tools in, but all you're really using is a hammer and a screwdriver. And that's kind of user research in a nutshell for 80% of what we do on a daily basis. Don't let anyone to anything otherwise. That's Jack.
Love it. Darren.
Yeah, and I love that. Absolutely love that. When you don't know, that should be the first thing. What are we trying to accomplish?
Research goals.
Because that's going to help you decide what you need to do. And that's why it's sort of difficult to answer the question because it comes back with a question. Well, what are you trying to accomplish? Because when we find out what we're trying to accomplish, okay, well, this works best for that, and this works best, and this works best. We can use these things. Then because you know what kind of data you're going to get specifically, not just actionable data, which is a high level word or term, but specifically what kind of data am I going to get? Because why do A/B testing if it doesn't apply?
Right.
If what comes out of that is not going to inform you. So as Dr. Nick said, you have all these different methods, but if they're not going to be serviceable, I mean, anybody ever tried
running surveys?
Yes. I love the example I take out a lot is that of, have you ever had to been assembling furniture and you can't find a screwdriver, so you grab a butter knife? Anybody ever done that?
I guess
it happens
own
a lot
so
over
many
here
tools.
in the States.
Okay.
You don't want to do that, and God help you if you slip, because even then you'll find out how dangerous a butter knife can be. So it's good to have the tool.
Butter.
Take time to get the tools. Yes, take the time to get the tools, and so you have the right tool at the right time. But make sure you always focus first. What am I trying to accomplish? Yeah, you use your fingernail, and then sometimes and if that breaks, and now you're really in trouble, and it goes down to the skin. Oh God, that's bad. Yeah, sometimes we really get desperate, especially if you're trying to screw in for us eyeglass wearers, and you can't find that teeny tiny screwdriver that you get in the kit from the eyeglass store. You end up trying to use anything. We get a bit desperate. We need the tool.
Nick, something to add.
There's a massive kind of wormhole that people get sucked down, and that's like what Darren is saying. It's people forget what they're actually doing. They get stuck down over focusing on these activities, and it's like, look, I'm an investigator. I'm a user researcher. I never forget that I'm investigating a thing. As a part of a product team, we're there to build a thing, right? Too many times we spend time building things that aren't the thing that we're building. And I can't tell you how important it is to be top down and objective about this, and to recognize when the activities on the team are too over-focused on not building the thing that you're building. agencies are classically good at this because they make so much money. It's over-engineering the solution sometimes because it looks good to the client. But that's not the thing, and you're not going to get the experience that you need building all of these meaningless maps and diagrams which no one uses. They're just there to do the thing, but it's not building the output. Be really careful of that. Too many researchers are really hung up on deliverables. Now, we can talk about that separately, but deliverables are an important thing, but appropriate deliverables. Sorry, I don't want to take us down a rabbit hole.
I'm going to go to the second question. Now that we're 15 minutes in, I'll go to our second question. Okay, so this one had a link to a UX Planet article, but I'm not sure you're going to need it because the question kind of indicates what the article was about. It says, can you please talk a little bit, I don't know if you have a note paper on this one. Can you please talk a little bit about the difference between personas, user scenarios, user stories, user workflows, and storyboards? When I read about them one by one, they sound like the same thing. I tried to Google it. I found one article on it, and it's a poopy article. And it was a UX Planet. It was a UX Planet article that seems to be called User Personas, Scenarios, User Stories, and Storyboards. What's the difference? So who wants to talk about personas, scenarios, user stories, user workflows, and storyboards? Nick, you look kind of ready. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it because
I'm going to take a quick. I'm going to take a quick moment away from the computer while you talk. Go.
Go for it. Okay, this is a common problem. Let's take personas, and the one you didn't mention is pen portraits. Personas and pen portraits are a common. They're two different deliverables, two different assets that do different things in different worlds. I've tried for my life, to get pen portraits to even inform a persona, and I can't. So pen portraits are marketing things at one level, they're hard to do. A persona really is an encapsulation, a storage of data, okay, of user-generated data. That's all it is. It's a storage container. That's what it should be. It should be all about user needs and pain points. If nothing else, it should be the archetypal data that represents that segment, shall we say. Okay, that's probably the simplest way of putting that. It's not AI. It's not something you can query. Let's move quickly because there's a lot of things going on there, and some of those I can't talk to. But to user stories is a big one because, again, that's come up in a recent project of mine. User stories are fundamentally different to personas. They're not in the same ballpark. A user story, from my mind, from my experience, is something that a product manager or a business analyst will write, which is a way of encompassing a user need that's been garnered in research and tested. A user story is something that is consumed by developers so they can write functions, they can write codes to do stuff. As a user, I need to be able to do this so that, However, yes, this is where it gets messy because user stories all day and all night get confused with user needs. Now, a user need, especially in UK government, but in user research world, is as a user researcher, I need to make notes so that I don't forget important insight during a research session, right? That kind of a need. Product folk, delivery managers and other folk have sometimes got this really wrong and start writing user stories as user needs without speaking to users. So user stories and user needs are absolutely separate.
That makes them user guesses.
They are related. They are related to each other on some level, but they're not the same at all. The other stuff you mentioned, I just can't talk to. Maybe Darren can. This jargonism is a massive, massive problem. Everything in our world is completely subjective. So I try to simplify this stuff. I don't care about all the other stuff I don't know about. If I use it in my day-to-day life, then it's important and needs clarification. And if not, it's just more buzzwordy crap that somebody somewhere is inventing because they want some airtime or attention or whatever they're doing. That's me in as much of a nutshell as I can do. Darren, anything you can add to that?
Yeah, let me jump in. I like what you just said. I'm gonna put my spin on that one phrase that Debbie just brought up. Call it user fables. It's just, they go up with these fables. Nobody's validated as a need. I love that. And then everybody wants to run off, and no. And then when the team runs off and starts chasing that thing, and then you find out it's like the emperor's new clothes. You find out that they're like nothing's there. It's a fable. And so now we've wasted how much money, how much time, and we're on what day of the sprint now? So
we're so agile.
Pretty bad. Personas. I want to touch on a couple of these, but there's some things I want to mention that just come to mind about personas, and sort of doubling back where somebody said that when they looked up on, they're the same person, they looked up on Google and they tried to find something about X, Y, and Z. Please be careful that a lot of times we sort of have been hypnotized in a sense into thinking that when we Google something, we're going to find a viable answer. Yeah, Imhotep. Yeah. No, I'm not going to do it. You're about to show it. We think that we're going to find an answer. No, you're going to find something to consider. Without the critical thinking, what you find may or may not be something that can be relied upon. So I want to make sure. And I love that the person said that they found one thing and it was poopy. Oh, good. Yeah, there we go. Found one thing and it was just garbage. Thinking Dr. Nick must not have seen that one before, but thank you. I think Kayleen did that. I think
Kayleen screenshot it and I
cool.
made it into an emoji, Darren.
So be careful about what you find. And I say that leading into the next one. Personas are, as Dr. Nick said, they should be a data container. They should be based on data. And when it comes to us doing the work, it helps us to have something we can touch, a tangible asset, if you will, that helps us to understand who we're designing for, who is it that we're actually trying to solve for, whose mental models are we seeking to reflect in the work that we're doing. A lot of the personas you see out there, talking about Googling again, a lot of the personas you see are god awful. Matter of fact, if you go to images.google.com and search for personas, the vast majority of what shows up are the things you need to flat out avoid at all costs. And a lot of this stuff is somebody got a template that's coming out of boot camps, and then all of a sudden, useless persona templates. They're just out there, especially when they have the thing where they come close to being marketing personas, if anything, and marketing personas and UX personas are completely different. They serve different purposes. But when you see that favorite brands thing that pops up everywhere down in the corner, what in the world does that do? What does that have to do with what I'm trying to design for? What does it have to do with me trying to support the mental models that we're supposed to have? It really doesn't.
Yeah,
so
Darren likes updates. Darren likes Starbucks, so I better change my information architecture.
Yeah, really. It means absolutely nothing. It's cute. It's cute. That's it. And sometimes it's not even that. And do that search that I mentioned. You'll see what I mean. You want to get some entertainment? We get a lot of free entertainment in UX. That's one. Images.google.com, search for personas, and watch all the gobbledygook that comes up. Scenarios are something that are good because you can, when you're trying to do the work, you want to think about, okay, what type of a situation might arise that I need to consider, and how well did what I design meet the needs that will arise in that situation. That's basically a scenario. Scenarios play into mental models as well, because you use scenarios to develop mental models. If you look at Indy Young's book and you look at the big chart that she does, that's all scenario based. And so I actually did an episode on my podcast about scenario based design, making sure that you're understanding how your solution is going to be used. Context. That you understand what the different, you're basically scenarios give context to the work. That's basically what a scenario is. And it's sad that a lot of people engage in design and there's no context. These things you see on LinkedIn where there's which one of these is better UX, and there's no context. So you're asking me how things look. You're not asking me how they work because we don't know what the context is. So you can't answer. And I started saying that sometime. I know a lot of them are clickbait, but every once in a while, if I really feel it's going to be useful, there we go. There's that clickbait. I will say this is We don't know what this is. Please stop doing this. We don't know. We don't know what the scenario is. And then that's one of the reasons that UX is on this downward spiral and downward slope, because we've let people tell us that that's what UX is, and it's not. And so we need to get off of that bandwagon. Dr. Nick covered user stories. I have been asked to write user stories sometime as well. Go into Jira or TFS, Microsoft's version of Jira, and you write the user stories. And the thing is, when I do it, I try to make sure that I'm validating that I'm under. I know people don't like that word in general. I think we have to defend or not defend, but define the word, because in some cases it's definitely legit. Are we doing what we should be doing? Basically, as part of what I'm thinking about. What are we trying to work towards? What's going on here? And I will write a user story and try to make sure this third part of this user story, is this really a thing? Why are we doing this? And making sure that we're not order takers, which is another thing that's causing problems for us, because we do things because people say, instead of validating that this is what we should be doing. And so we end up chasing the dog, chasing the tail again. So we need to user stories when we do get involved as UX people. It's good to make sure that we understand that these user stories are legit. And when we write them in a way that's going to be reflective of the driving a strong user experience. The bit about the workflows, love workflows. Absolutely love workflows, because it's part of helping to get an understanding for how the different that makes me think about task analysis, because we want to understand the different steps in a user experience, because it helps us to identify micro experiences, micro interactions, which is usually where things fall apart, but people don't usually pay attention to them. So workflows are valuable. Storyboards is really nothing but an illustrated scenario. In short, that's all it is.
And my problem with storyboards is that before boot camps, I'd pretty much never seen a storyboard in UX. I'd seen it in creative agency work, but I'd never seen it in UX. And all of a sudden, since boot camps, I'm seeing storyboards, and storyboards are usually an illustrated cartoon of the future state of a customer journey. And I see storyboards used as like, wow, when we finally build this new app or website, the user's going to be able to do exactly what they wanted, and they're just going to be exploding with delight. Fucking exploding with delight. And I always ask people, like, what's the purpose of this deliverable? What's the purpose of this artifact? How much time are you going to spend sketching a cartoon, imagining the fantasy of a good outcome, when that's not an artifact or deliverable or document that anybody can use? It's not actionable. Yep. We already know what our outcomes are supposed to be. We might have KPIs and success criteria and outcomes. I do not need an illustrated cartoon showing a stick figure jumping for joy because we built a good app. So I don't get it. Charlene says, I've never done a storyboard in UX, but I did it in my animation class. Emma Muzo says, yes. Exactly. I still don't understand what storyboards are doing in UX. Me either. But we are a half hour in and we've answered 2 questions. So I'm going to move on to the next question. This is a bizarrely slow pace for us. We have a question and we already have its follow-up question. So we've got 2 questions queued up from John on LinkedIn. And the first question is, any experience with multivariate testing? Any thoughts? Is it viable?
Definitely.
Am I starting this one?
I'll just Dr. let Nick. He's exploding with joy.
Sorry. No. I mean, I'll be quick. No, I'm sorry. Yes, of course it is. But like anything, it's a tool. And it's how you use it and what you're using it for. So does multivariate testing replace speaking to users? No, it doesn't. Multivariate testing has its place, but in certain projects on certain kinds of work. It doesn't apply to everything, and it depends on, there's so many different variables here, factors here, like the maturity of your organization, of your UX, of your digital team. You wouldn't jump straight into MVT, but you could do. MVT needs to be counterbalanced with excellent user research, because one is the what and the other is the why. And if you ever see me speak at conference, I'm always talking about, if you're a user researcher or a UX person, you need to go make friends, go seek out, put your arm around or become buddies with whoever the web analyst or web analyst team is or are, because they're kind of like your other half. You might be the qualitative researcher, and for all intents and purposes, they're the quant researcher. Okay. In my psychology old days, we do an ANOVAs, analysis of variance, and t-tests, all by hand.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't have to do an ANOVA, an analysis of variance. That's ridiculous. To do a multivariate analysis of variance is, guess what? Called an MVT. Wow. So we've now got these machines that do these statistical things, right? And that's all it is a statistical machine, right? It's garbage in, garbage out. I've seen people actually drive off the cliff with spectacular confidence when you think MVT is this panacea, okay? And you just drive at the numbers. It's another analogy I give is you're flying an aeroplane, okay? You can absolutely fly a modern aeroplane by just looking at your dials and dashes and all that stuff, right? But the point is you really got to look out the window at some point, right? And MVT, if you just spend your time looking at the dials, it's not a good way to fly. You need to look out the window, right? You need to counterbalance it with user research and the real world, not just this quantitative lens. So yes, it's valid, but it's only valid if you apply it in the right ways. And sometimes if you put it on the wrong pathway, you can wait weeks and months to get significance. So again, it's got to be the right brand with the right traffic in order to get the right answers in a reasonable time frame. It's a whole world in itself. I'm just scratching the surface with it. Leave it to web analysts, but work with them, because they'll be sitting there looking at their great big kind of sonar or radar map of the world, and they'll see these blobs and blips, and they have got no idea why anything is happening. They'll have good guesses, and they'll tell you that there's a peak here, a trough here, within inches of your life, but they can't really tell you why. And that's our job, is to go out there and say, right, this is why.
Yes.
These user needs are not being fulfilled. There's a bounce happening here. This was happening in the world and distracted traffic. There's all kinds of other reasons why stuff happens. So we're the why people and they're the what people. That's me.
Thanks. Darren, and then I've got
Absolutely.
something to add.
Yes. One thing I want to throw in first is, and of course, I'm going to do my educator bit. A lot people will use the term multivariate, and they use AB and multivariate interchangeably, and they are not the same thing. So I want to make sure that people know that. AB testing is, there's one thing that's different between A and B, and there's only A and B. And then you go into your A/B test. Maybe the buttons are different. Maybe the call to action are different, but there's only one thing that's different. That's A/B testing. That's not multivariate testing. With multivariate testing, you may have, it could be 2, 3, 4, 5 variations, but multiple things are different. Hence the term or the aspect multi, the prefix multi, because there's multiple things that are different between them. So I just want to make sure. And then Dr. Nick already covered it all. Multivariate testing is indeed valid, but it's like we said earlier, does it work for what you're doing? Is it needed for what you're doing? It may not be. Don't try to, you can tighten the screw with a butter knife, but I'd highly advise against it, especially if a power driver or a screwdriver is available. So that's basically my take on that.
Well, thanks. I want to chip in, and then I'm going to throw the follow-up question at you from the same person. So I wrote 2 notes here. Number 1, I wrote vet the variance. I find that with this and with A/B testing, sometimes people are just... with A/B testing, people just have an idea for a B, they throw it out there. It hasn't been through usability testing, and so it's guess against previous guess. And I've seen some multivariate testing done last year on a project that we were working on. We had nothing to do with the testing, but when we started looking at the client's website, and we found that every time we loaded stuff up, it looked different, and that a lot of things on this, what should have been the same page, were different. We could tell what was going on. And what we noticed was that they were multivariate testing their way to a better design. But then what's your standards for a better design? And this calls back to the Medium article I wrote called Your Metrics Are Myopic. And I find that sometimes what people think is the winner of the multivariate test, like, well, or an A/B test even, well, did we sell more? Did this page lead to better conversion? Did we sell more because of this variation? And what I found from this thing we worked on last year was that even though we learned that a certain layout and combination of things seemed to sell more, we also heard from people that there were more questions, more complaints, and more returns. So congratulations that you found some sort of combination that made more sales, but are we sure that it's a long-term winner? Because if we look at the short-term successes of some sort of metric and we don't look at the long-term customer experience and user experience of the full process, this was e-commerce. People shopped for something, they bought it, they then got it. Now there was a problem. So I remind people, don't get too myopic with those success metrics, because there is a much larger arc of the experience to examine. Now, I'm going to give you this person's follow-up question, which I know will spark some discussion. So he wrote it in a few different LinkedIn posts, and I'm kind of gluing them together in a little bit of a hodgepodge. Does MVT actually produce the best designs based on users' choices of this or that variant and those variants combined? AI software takes all these variables, makes hundreds of combinations, discards most of the variables, and presents the best combinations. Is this viable design? Well, I'm not sure it qualifies as design.
Did you say?
I said AI.
Did you say MVT?
Yeah,
did you say
multivariate
MVT
testing.
or MVP?
No, I meant to say
okay.
MVT. If I said P, I'm wrong. That's me. Multivariate testing, produce the best designs. No. AI software takes these variables, discards, and presents the best combinations. Is this viable design? Nick is on fire.
You
Nick, I see him burning.
You definitely said MVT.
I said MVT.
You did say MVT. I'm asking because people got to remember that we want to have a good UX in our UX discussion. Please don't bring acronyms in. Acronyms are death. We're all subject to so many acronyms. Please don't create a new acronym. Okay, that's it.
End scene. Okay, Nick. AI for for multivariate testing.
This is actually kind of what Debbie and Darren were just saying. You know, if you design visually and you use your research methodologies as visual filters, like using MVT to work out all the visual stuff, or kind of minor behavioral, shall we say, on-page behavior, you're completely blindsided to all the other behavior, like all the user needs, the really important motivators, the driving stuff. Why are they there in the first place? So who cares if it's pink or green if you don't sell the flowers that I'm trying to buy or whatever's going on, right? I mean, it's completely ridiculous. That's a design or a marketing mindset. I'm talking those people off the cliffs or watching them just walk off willingly on a daily basis. I don't even bother arguing with them anymore. They're so strong in their mindset. It's like, look, I had an interview recently when it was really screamingly obvious that they were a very quantitative UX or a conversion-based UX team. And it feels like the UX was only there to make money. Now, kind of, I think what we've all been talking about, but no one's actually talking directly at it, is, and I bet you Debbie said it in her article, that the metrics are okay, but actually, are you delivering on the needs? Because if you want to make money, meeting needs is the best way of making money. Arguing over blue or green or up or you know, do apples go under fruit or whatever, you know, or it's ridiculous. It's so missing the point. You're squabbling over tiny things which aren't going to make you that much money, when if you took a big step back and actually took a look at the bigger picture, you'd make an absolute fortune. So I don't believe that if you're going to use MVT and some kind of automated way, yes, you can make it visually lovely. You can make it mechanically lovely. But when you go up beyond mechanics of can you do a thing, no, it doesn't, and it's not viable. And I'll put my neck out and say that I don't think it works. I don't think it can work, and I think people doing it don't even know that it doesn't work until they've lost their market share. I haven't seen a project where it works.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to add that, you know, we recently worked on a project this year where the goal after our extensive research was to make 2 different landing pages for the client to then test against each other. And they are coding them now, so I hope to eventually have these results for everybody. But you know, we didn't make a page with 2 slight variations. We didn't make the same page where the add to cart was over here or the add to cart was over here. We made 2 completely different pages based on different things that we heard during our research. And we decided to go with one fairly traditional page, and we went with one highly experimental page. And there really be a great, I think that the problem with the multivariate testing is that it assumes that all the variables you have in the hopper must be the right ones, and we just have to find the right order of them. And so, and that's, if Larry Marine were here, he would be beating us with a stick, because he would say, why are you assuming that you have all the right puzzle pieces and that you just have to figure out the way the puzzle goes together? What if you don't have the right puzzle pieces? Now you're overconfident and you're just shuffling around pieces over and over, and you're picking the best, you're picking the best smelling lump of shit out of all of the lumps of shit. And so, even though Larry wouldn't say that, he's too polite. So in some cases, Darren. And so, so I would say that I think that that type of testing is typically done more by marketing than by us, because we care too much about the end-to-end user experience. We care too much about the qualitative experience. We want to measure the task efficiency, the time on task, the errors, and we're not just looking for a simple metric of, did putting this button over here and making it this color happen to sell more widgets on Thursdays? Nick?
Just very quickly, one thing I wanted to add. The way I see MVT, and I have done for years, and I kind of forgot about this, MVT is a bit like the bottom of a funnel, right? If you imagine this is a maturity funnel, you start off at the top, or a carafe, right? What I'm trying to say is that MVT is for UX teams and people who have got to the point where you need to investigate micro interactions and that stuff, and you're doing everything right, and you need that ultra electron microscope, laser-like way of looking at a particular thing. What people have done is taken that and started using it much higher up the funnel. And it's like, whoa, no, you're using the tool for the wrong thing. Okay? If we've got everything else right, then we can start arguing about button colors and placement of the buy now button and all of that stuff. But people are just, they've taken that bottom of the funnel thing and moved it right to the top, and that's why it doesn't work.
I love that. Love that. They're turning us into spitballers. They've removed the science from what we do and replaced it with spitballing. And that's not yes. Yes, absolutely. I mean, we got where are your building blocks? Where's the science? Where's your strategy? But don't just guess. That's why there's a lot of people out there that think that anybody, quote unquote, anybody can do UX. In a sense, if you want to be a UXer, come on in, come on aboard. Let's show you how to do it. That, from that perspective, everybody can do it. But this is when a lot of people say anybody can do it, when you listen closely to those people, they're dumbing down what we do, and they're stripping the science out of it. Hey, Joel, they're stripping the science out of it. And then you wonder why so many things fail. We're surrounded by failure, and then people don't get upset about things that fail. The real UXers get upset about it because we don't want to fail. Our passion is there. We want to drive the best experience. We love seeing the success. We love seeing the numbers, viable numbers go up. We love seeing that. But not when you spitball, you're throwing, for those who aren't familiar with the spitballing metaphor, it's like making a spitball and throwing it to the wall, and whichever one sticks, that's what we'll go with. And then you still don't know. Just because one spitball is always going to fall last. That doesn't mean that it's the best spitball per se.
That's kind of like voting for the designs in the room during a design sprint or design thinking or lean UX. Yes. Well, Sally and Jim said this was the best one, so this is the one we'll release to the customer. We have accidentally dumbed down so much of UX by turning it into glorified guessing, and that has led people to hire people, give them no time for projects, and say, well, just guess. You guys are supposed to be good at this, right? So you got 2 days. What's right for the user? So, Nick, something to add, and then we've got some new questions.
Just remember the science, okay? Hypothesis. Science. What's your hypothesis, right? That's the whole thing. If you can challenge somebody, what's your hypothesis? Like, why are you following this line of investigation and using these methodologies? What are you trying to do here? What's your hypothesis? This is why people go on these wild goose hunts. Because they're chasing their tail and they don't know it. I don't want to overdo this, but that's when I talk about structured learning and science. And hypothesis testing, that's what that's about, you know. If it doesn't work, try something else, pivot, or maybe try a different methodology, etc. People are just using the tools and thinking they're experts. And one last thing, actually, all the creative directors and art directors that are around are bringing rock star design mentality into UX, and we all know it's not about us.
And they suck.
Don't be a rock star.
All right.
I didn't get to say one quick thing. AI was mentioned.
Yes.
Beware of AI. That's another thing that's being brought into UX that's stripping the science. They think it's science because they're bringing in AI. No, AI is not going to do what a qualified, skilled human with UX acumen will do. It's not going to do it. That should not be a part of the checks and balances of nailing the experience. And so beware of all of this introduction of AI into UX. Beware of that. Watch it carefully. And watch it fall on his face, too, because it's going to fall.
Well, people don't understand what we do. It seems like AI can just mix and match different shapes on a page until we find the shape that makes us the most money. But that's not how any of this works, as the American TV commercial goes. We have 4 new questions. So, you know, let's go a little more lightning round on this. The first one is from friend of the show, Maggie, who says, what was that aha moment that you realized you wanted to be in this field? Darren.
Yeah, for me, it was I was an instructional designer during the day. I had already started to do what we now know as UX at night, but I wasn't doing it full time. And I actually applied for a job and didn't get it. A UX related job. I applied for an information architect job at a creative agency for Wonderman. Actually, no, at the time it was J. Walter Thompson. Some people are familiar with that name. And I think they changed all the names like they always do. But I didn't get the job. And if you don't get the job, you usually, you're not feeling it. But I went back and I assessed what I wanted to do. I took a close look at who I was. And when I looked at what I really enjoyed, I enjoyed doing the information architecture work. I was doing usability testing, though we weren't calling it that. I loved doing that. I loved the discovery. I loved solving the design problems. And that's when I said, phooey on this master's in education that I was about to go after. And I'm going to change everything. And I'm going in this direction. And I like to describe it as mortgaging my future on UX. And I've been doing it ever since. So I get engaged in introspection and saw this is what I really enjoy. This is what I really want to do. And that was my light bulb moment. And that's it. Never look back.
Thanks. Nick?
I've been sitting here. I didn't have a aha moment. I just didn't. I've always been going in this direction, if you know what I mean. Psychology was something that I was already doing and guiding me. And computer science was a thing that was already my life. And so when I smashed those two things together in HCI, because it made absolute sense, because HCI kind of, if you're a psychologist, it really is amazing, because psychology plus computer science almost does equal HCI. And then once you're an HCI person, there's nowhere else to go. It's either academia or UX. I mean, that's basically it. I wasn't going to stay in academia anymore. So became a commercial UX person. There was no great big, oh my God, I've got to do this. It's just, that's the trajectory I was on and how I've kind of lived my life. And it was a natural progression, if you know what I mean. Which is kind of why it's so bloody hard watching what's happening to our industry, because it's heartbreaking. You know, we're watching everything just disappear. It's sad. It's really sad. And actually, the worst part is all the products and services in the world that you use today. We could go live right now with any brand and just pick loads and loads and loads of major holes in it. It's really bad. And these are companies who are making millions and millions and millions of pounds or dollars, what have you. You know, I've got nothing wrong with profitability, but make sure your services and products are decent first. Yeah,
that's not happening. As for me, a little bit more like Nick, I'd always been into computers since 1979. And I took some psychology classes in university for fun. And after I was out of university a little while, a friend called up and said, you have to see this thing called the World Wide Web, and you can make pages for it. And I think I stayed awake for a week learning HTML and reverse engineering stuff. And I taught myself HTML. And then my thought was, I should make pages based on some of those things I learned in those psychology classes, the way people parse information and some of those things I learned. And then my next thought was, I bet people would pay people who know how to make web pages really well. And maybe I'll start a little business and see what happens. And within my first year of being in business, we went from doing some local websites to being hired by the Miss America organization to do their official website. And
Wow.
and while you may have positive or negative feelings about the Miss America organization, the people that I worked with were very nice, and the experience was positive. And then the Liberace Museum in Vegas saw our Miss America website and was like, we want a website. And so we ended up, while I was living in New York and watching all the local web designers fight over the same 3 bicycle shops in Brooklyn, I had these clients. I had these clients that were all over the country who really loved the unique websites that we were building because we were putting some really special stuff into them, and that's where it went for me. So it was never like, wow, UX, I have to do this. It was more like, wow, I love computers and inventing things and helping people organize their businesses and improve their businesses. And hey, I learned some things about psychology. And so that's why I say, like, I was doing it before I really knew about the more formal practice of it. And eventually I had to, straighten out some of what I was doing for the more formal practice of it. But I didn't have an aha moment where it was like, oh, UX, yeah, I've got to do that. I learned about UX 13 years after I was doing it, or 10, somewhere around that. So thanks for asking, Maggie. Our next question comes from Aitan, who says, can we talk about hybrid UX positions versus having a UX researcher and UX designer separately? Which one is better? So do you have a thought on researchers and designers being the same person, or researchers and designers being separate people? Someone help me out.
I'll jump in on this one. Yeah, I'll get. Oh, you going? Go ahead.
No, you are.
Oh,
no.
okay,
You went first. Go.
I'm going first if you don't start.
No, okay, all right. It depends. The famous UX phrase.
I don't have an effect for that.
We do need one for that. At one company, it's important to separate them. The UX maturity level is going to play into that. The needs are gonna play into that. The way the leadership is structured is there is no set answer. The thing is, if they are melded into one individual, which I've done several times in my career, look at Abby Covert's the UX. I think she's the one. Was it Leah Bewley, the UX team of one? That book. When you look at something Abby, like that, when that happens, when it does happen, you hope that it's legit, because I do see a lot of cases where it's not legit. Where you see the person we saw a person the other day who was trolling people on LinkedIn, and you looked at the person's profile, they're a senior, they've been doing UX for 2.5 years and wasn't even really UX when you really dug into it. So this person is doing both. So you can't look at that person. We have a bad habit, I think, on average in the community, of looking at a sample set of one and then blowing it out and making creating a worldview off of a sample set of one, to use some research terminology there. It's not good. So it depends. Are you qualified for it? If you get that opportunity, you want to make sure you have the chops to handle both. A lot of people don't. Some people do it because they want to. I want to be a designer. And so they jump into the role, but they don't really have the skill. So that's basically it. One company can do it, another company can't. And it basically depends on what those needs are and whether or not folks are qualified. No set answer on that from me.
Nick, something to add?
Yeah, humor me. I'm sorry. This is a big one for me. I okay. I'm a big. I believe that researchers and designers, what I call a full stack professional, full stack is better than a dedicated person, and I would
Yeah.
actually put my skills against anybody else, not anybody. You know what I'm saying? I'd put them against somebody who had a specialist skill set because it makes me a phenomenally well-rounded UXer and both inform the other. So when I'm researching,
Yes.
I'm already informing my design. I'm getting hypotheses. I'm visualizing all of that amazing stuff. However, massive timeout here. This is major. Okay, if the world we were in had progressive learning and we didn't have fake news and liars and fraudsters, I would say that it makes most sense for our industry to spend another 5 or 10 years upskilling all the designers, getting them research skills, and then bring UX back to a full service, full stack practice. However, you've seen what's happened in the past 3 to 5 years with UX UI, the way that people have behaved, the way they've told us that we're wrong at our own jobs. I'm not sharing as much as I used to because I'm not giving people free stuff anymore who are just going to rip my stuff off and tell me that I'm wrong. So what I'm saying is I don't believe that the full stack practitioner is coming back in any real sense because we can't get people to do interaction design properly, let alone doing research and interaction design, which is UX.
Yeah.
So if you're that kind of an individual, listen, the truth of the matter is I'm a user researcher, always have been. When I was a UX consultant, the first 3 to 5 years of my career was me learning design on the fly. Remember, I'm a scientist. I've done BSc, MSc, PhD, blah, blah, blah. I've never seen a pencil in my life in terms of art or anything designy, creative. So my first day on the job as a UX person, my first wireframe was awful and terrifying and scary, and I had to learn it all. In much the same way I watch people doing it with research and design and stuff, right? Learning one of the practices, research or design, is a big gig. Doing both, forget it. So either come to the practice and have one being really, really, really mature and develop the other one. Frankly, I think we're going to live into a world of experts, and it's only in really specialist organizations where you'll have a hybridized role. That's what I think. I think there'll be too much cost cutting and not enough care about doing the actual job. It'll be, if I can get 2 for 1, then I will. If somebody can write that I do research, but they're just a shonky researcher with minimal design skills, that's going to turn out really badly. But the world's going to have to learn that one, and we're probably on a 20-year cycle at this point. Sorry, I'm rambling, but you get my general drift.
No.
We're with you. So let me add to that before we move to our next question. And everybody's posting crying faces and fire in the chat. So thanks for that. The thing that I want to add to that was I agree with both of our guests. I think that it's a matter of talent and skill and ability. I see too many researchers thinking, well, I've got to be a designer if I want to get a job. And I see too many designers thinking, well, I should be able to do some research. And then I see their research done really, really badly. Not 100% of people, but many of them. Could they upskill? Maybe. Research isn't going to be for everybody. It's just a different set of skills and abilities. Some people will grow into it and some people will not be good at it or will not enjoy it. So I tell people, do not feel like you have to go out there and be the ultimate T-shaped UXer where you can do all the things. I still wish everybody was better at information architecture. That's going to help your research and your design. Go learn more information architecture. But the main thing that I want to say about this that the other folks haven't covered is the more pressure we're under, and it's a false pressure and we need to get away from it, but we can't yet. The more we're under the false pressure to be agile, the more it's going to hurt us to try to put one person on weeks and weeks and weeks of quality work. And I think if we can try to get away from being under engineering's control and we can take a look at dual track and especially tri-track agile. If you look at tri-track agile, the assembly line is research is constantly doing research, feeding into architects and designers. Architects and designers are constantly doing stuff. They're feeding each other in the assembly line. And then at certain points, the designers are giving things to engineers to be built. If we bring one person onto an agile team and say, they're your researcher and they're your information architect and they're your content strategist and they're your interaction designer, your prototyper, and your tester, there is no way we're going to be agile. And then we're going to hear endless bullshit from people at our company. UX isn't agile. Maybe we don't need them. Maybe we'll just have product managers do this because UX is not agile. So can someone like upskill our product managers? Like I learned pivot tables on Excel, so I must be able to learn research. I can talk to people. So the problem is if we are under so much pressure to be more efficient and agile, and we're never going to get there while we're trying to put one unicorn on 19 weeks of work. I'm fighting this year, and I'll probably keep fighting for a nearly 1-to-1 ratio for engineers and UX. I want to see 2 UX architects and 3 UX researchers teamed up on whatever the hell this team is doing. While you've got your 6 engineers working 8 weeks, I want 5 UX people working 8 weeks, but ahead of you because of assembly line. And that's going to be everybody's agile wet dream, but we're not going to get there while we're trying to put one jack of all unicorns across this entire long, thorough, lots of phases, lots of tasks, Darren in the middle process. And so I want to say, while I agree with Nick that it's been great for me to have both sets of skills, thank you, Marcel Marceau. It's great to have both sets of skills, and it's great to be thinking about the design when you're doing the research, or thinking about what research I should have had, or how I would do my testing when I'm doing design. I don't want anybody to feel pressure to be both, and I ultimately want to see much larger collaborative UX teams pairing up on things the way engineers do on agile teams. It's the only way we're ever going to meet this bullshit. You've got to be agile thing. We have to stop throwing one person, or like at Macy's, 1/3 of me at an agile team because I'm spread across 3 projects. So yeah, you can get 1/3 of me. You can get me 10 hours a week, and I'm going to do all the things. Yeah. Okay, there's some fire in there. Joel goes, it's the first time I've heard Debbie do the Valley Girl voice. That's worth a whole show in that voice. A quick story about that. So after I did voice acting school, I was going through audible.com's website for people looking for people to narrate their books for free, because I figured I'll get some practice. I'll narrate some ebooks. And there was this psychologist who had written a self-help book. And in the notes for the auditions, she had written, well, I'm from New York and I have a New York accent, so maybe the narrator should have a New York accent. Now, some of you know that I grew up in New York and that I've spent decades losing the New York accent. So what I did was I recorded for this woman, I recorded her sample script in a heavy New York accent, and then in my voice narration voice, and I was like, you don't want the New York accent one. Now, I didn't get the job, but I played it for some of the people I worked with at the time, and they were like, can you just please read this book in a New York accent? Because the funny thing about it was it made the book somehow immediately condescending. And because of the New York accent has like built-in condescension, I think. And so it was like this self-help book, and I don't remember the script right now, but I remember saying into this microphone at the time, I remember saying like, you have to love yourself. It's very important to love yourself. Like, well, like that's in a New York accent. Is that compelling? Does anyone want to hear 8 hours of self-help psychology book in a New York accent where I'm telling you it's very important to love yourself? Why don't you love yourself already? So Lisa wrote, my parents are from Yonkers. Would you like some coffee? Yeah. So yeah, word on accents. They're great for comedy, but do not record your ebook in an 8-hour condescending New York accent. Darren, something to add?
Yeah, just sort of doubling back. One quick comment, as I know we're in lightning round mode. The thing that Debbie mentioned about the art directors being hired to run UX departments, that's one of our biggest problems now. That's like a new trend in the last 2 years in particular, a lot of art directors and creative directors are moving in and being hired to run UX teams. They don't know what UX is on average. There are very few that do. I work with some now that are good at what they do. They know their stuff, but they've made the transition. I talked about this on my podcast. Those are some of the worst people to transition into UX. They bring in their visual design folks. They bring in folks that don't know what's happening from a UX perspective. They're all about making things look good, not work well. And then as a result, they don't want to hire people like me, Dr. Nick, and Debbie. They don't want to hire people that really know their stuff. So UX hiring is already dysfunctional. And now you brought in these people and it's making matters worse. And I've come across a lot of it in my travels and applying for jobs. You're very hard pressed to find somebody running UX that knows what UX really is and values the right talent. And they even have these crazy ideas. Oh, we're going to bring in a designer and a researcher and put them side by side. They're blowing up their budgets. And it's a matter of time before leadership is going to come back. Oh, this is happening today. We need a designer and a researcher. And then they're bringing in information architects and they're bringing in UX writers and they're bringing in all these people. And it's this multi-head monster and nothing's getting done. I
was going to say, I like the multi-head monster, but it sounds like bad planning, bad execution. And again, the fake agile idea that if you sit a researcher next to a designer, they're just going to feed off each other. The researcher's going to say a thought and the designer's going to design it. And I tell people that doesn't even happen on your agile teams. The developer doesn't write a line of code and the QA person runs over and checks it. The developer has to write a block of functioning code and pass that on the assembly line to the QA person who can then check it. We're same way. The researcher's got to do a block of information or a block of work with their outputs and outcomes for the designer to benefit from that. Nick, you look like you have something to add.
Yeah, look, if you are in a team and you're within that pyramid and you've got the art director or creative director at the top and they've been enrolled for 2 years or something, you should be able to identify them quite quickly, because the real problem with, in addition to everything that Darren and Debbie have said, is that the knowledge transfer is nil, or what you're going to get is garbage. So you cannot learn in that kind, and it's the entire pyramid, all the way up to the head. So they're going to hire in a UX manager or leads which are in their own image, because they're not going to want to get called out or threatened. Occasionally they do have vision and they'll hire the right people, but that's really, really minor time. Usually they'll hire designers in their own image, and the whole pyramid gets packed out. There is no progressive learning from junior to mid to senior to lead of any value in that kind of a pyramid, because they're all coming at you from the wrong perspective or limited or naive experience. If you're in one of those pyramids, get out quickly.
Amityville UX.
I grew up next to Amityville. We used to have to go, we had to learn driving by driving into Amityville. We would drive by the Amityville Horror House. It was real. It was yellow. All right, we have a question. We have 2 questions from Charlene. We're going to start with this one, except I pressed the wrong button and now it's not coming up on the screen. Give me a moment. The question was, I can't find it on my list, your thoughts on design critique. Let's start with Darren here. Design critique, Darren.
Design critique. And then again, I fan out and I think about it from multiple angles, so I'll address it as generally as I can. Team critique. It's good when you're doing work, if you're on a UX team. No matter how experienced we are, a lot of times we're too close to what we're doing. And for that reason, it's good to take work that you've done and get some kind of a peer review so that somebody else can see it. Maybe they'll see something that you missed, or maybe they'll have an idea, things of that nature. It's always good to get your work critiqued from that perspective. That's probably the most valuable type of design critique that you can have, is to have a peer review before things go out. So that's pretty critical. Design critique in the wild, highly advise against it. Again, on average, for the most part, because when you ask somebody who does not have the context of what you're working on, whether or not you did a good job or not, or to give you feedback. Without the context, they're limited as to how they can provide you with input about your design. So just a couple of things that come to mind about design critique in general, and that's it.
All right, Nick.
I don't think I've ever done a design critique, and if I have, I genuinely don't care what people think, because the only people that care are my users, right? It's the data that tells me if I'm doing a good job or not some committee of people who just have an opinion. Great. If that makes them feel better, good, I'll do it. I'll be like, yeah, play the game. But actually, if you get hammered by a bunch of people in suits, so what? What's the big deal? They don't really matter. The people that matter, the people using the thing that you're designing. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, and I had a similar thought somewhere in between your two thoughts. I wrote down, who's doing the critique? Because I find that if I have a fellow UX person or someone above me or below me who's going to look at my work and just see if I missed something obvious, kind of like my first line of QA, I welcome that kind of collaboration. But what I definitely don't welcome is someone from outside of our domain claiming that they've read about design critique and they want to critique my designs. So I definitely don't want the business analyst, the product manager, a product owner, an engineering lead, the scrum master. I don't want these people looking at my designs and saying, ooh, I'd like to give you, a design critique. It's like, well, you don't really have the right knowledge to do that. Now, if you want to come in as the product manager and take a look at my work and make sure it matches the user stories and that I didn't miss any of the things that we're supposed to be working on for this sprint or this feature, fine, then put on your product manager hat and take the product manager view when we're reviewing my work. But please don't put on the product manager hat and try to tell me how to do better UX. I'd like to hear that from my fellow UX pros, above me, below me, lateral to me, whatever it is. I'm happy to hear that stuff. So yeah, I'll cross that one out. We'll move on to the next question, which is about portfolios. And Lisa is here live and asks, what are the things you look for in a UX portfolio? I come from a coaching and writing background. I'm trying to move into a career in UX. UX writing in particular interests me. Thanks. What do you look for in portfolios? Anybody want to start on that other than me?
I'll start.
Okay.
Storytelling. I want to see what was the problem? What were you trying to solve or address? How did you do it? How did you address it from A to Z? What roles did you play? And what value did you bring? And actually, as a former hiring manager, and I still do, even when I've been the hiring manager and I've been the Cyrano de Bergerac in the bushes, thinking about the Steve Martin version, Roxanne, where I was not in charge officially, but people said they couldn't do their job without me. And so I was in the bushes telling them what to do to run the department. So from that perspective, I would look and it was when I saw a portfolio that was too beautiful, that's a red flag to me as a UX professional, because they're focused too much on the presentation layer when much of what we do is not at the presentation layer. So me personally, I want to see the ugly stuff. I want to see the rudimentary things. I want to see the building blocks. Yes, process. I want to see that. And then there's times when the person, I call it ugly, quote unquote ugly. But I've seen people that they're trying to show you the presentation layer stuff, and that stuff's ugly. Now, when that's when that's
the baby is ugly, ma'am.
we have a different problem. I have actually I've interviewed someone before, and you could tell the person was so HCI focused that they didn't have an eye for design at all. And you could see they didn't respect design grids. I noticed that. The way that they laid things out in their PowerPoint, because they presented their stuff in a PowerPoint, and the heading is over here and something else. There's no alignment anywhere. You're telling a story, but it's almost like everything's stick figures. Dr. Katz, the old cartoon where everybody was
Dr.
trembling
Katz.
like this.
Squiggle vision.
Yeah, squiggle vision stuff. Well, I don't want to see squiggle vision in your portfolio. So or the equivalent thereof. So when I saw that, I couldn't respect what the person was doing because you could see that they had no eye. We're not the visual designers, but we have something to say about visual design. And when you can't present in a manner that reflects some awareness of value in that arena, then I'm stepping back a little bit. I want to see your story. We're not the visual designers or the presentation layer folks, but don't just throw something at me that's obviously thrown together and very haphazard, because that means you're not giving attention to detail, and attention to detail I want to see. So
I like
that's
it.
my quick
Nick?
take.
One of the things that's fundamental to UXs of all types is that we manage and present information. That's what's going on here. If you can't do that, you're in the wrong gig. And so your CV can be in black and white in Word. It's still going to have the same design principles in there. Yeah, you can't do half the stuff. You haven't got grids and blah, but you can still have weighting of fonts and priority of information. There's lots of designy things that you would do on a web page that you'll do on your CV or resume. And the point is I've never been a designer in my entire life, as you heard. But I can work with information and I can present it, as you've seen in my decks, on stage, all of that stuff. Is that storytelling? Is it narrative? I don't know. I'm good with information. And that's what UX people are, in my humble opinion.
Yes.
With regards to portfolios, I can't really tell you because I haven't, all the interviews I've done in the past year have all been research ones and they've not been portfolio driven. The thing that irks me and the thing that I'm looking for the most is, like I'm looking at any CV or as any good investigator, I'm looking for the validity. I want to know how much of that portfolio is your actual work and decision making, not here's something that because I've had recruiters en masse tell me you should put the high fidelity final thing in. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I've got an ugly folio because I didn't do that work. Everything in my portfolio I personally have done. And where I've done it with somebody, it's clearly stated. I can't use it as evidence if it turns out that you're showing something that somebody else did. If you're going to pay me to build you a house and you want to see my case studies of houses that I've built, I bloody well should have built them so that you can make a decision on me. It's exactly the same in our recruitment world, bottom line.
Yep.
Yeah, and what I would add for portfolios is I'm usually looking for storytelling and process. I want to see the process that you took to do whatever your work was. Research, architecture, design, writing, content strategy, whatever it is, you had a process. I find that some people don't have a process, and that stands out because we do have a process. We have a few, though they're mostly derivatives of each other, and there should have been a process. There should have been a process and an approach. And so I'm looking for the process, and the storytelling helps me understand that. The storytelling also helps fill in the gaps of why did the project go wrong, or what happened to this project, or what happened at the end, or, if let's say it's research, they only let me interview 6 people, but I know that I should have been meeting 8 to 12 from each of our personas, but they didn't make the time or budget. Storytelling can help me see, this person sounds like they know the right thing to do, but they weren't able to do the best thing in that moment. So storytelling helps me out. Another thing is we're implementing now at my new job a way to QA work that's in flight. And we are going to QA work for technical excellence, attention to detail, and critical thinking. And I think that many of us are looking for these things in portfolios also, whether or not we realize it. I hear so much storytelling and process, and even I've been saying for years, storytelling and process. But now that we've done this new work QA scoring system based on technical excellence, attention to detail, and critical thinking, I think when it comes to UX, many of us are looking for these things in the portfolio. If you are an artist or a sculptor, we might not be looking for critical thinking, but we probably are looking for technical excellence and attention to detail. So it's going to be different by jobs, but I think we need all three. Quick follow-up question that we got that I'll throw in here out of order was, PDF or online portfolios. Now, that's hotly debated, and I'll let the guys answer this too. But I normally say, if the jobs you're going for have been asking for PDFs, you should probably have a PDF. If the jobs you've been asking for expect a URL where they can go to a website, you should probably have some sort of website, even a simple WordPress website. I do not have my portfolio in a PDF at this time. I do have it in a website. When I'm reviewing portfolios, I prefer to review them as a website, even if it's research, because sometimes there are deliverables that I want to zoom in on. And if it's a PDF, I can try to blow the PDF up, but sometimes it's not clear enough. So if you have some sort of image of some work you've done that I'm trying to see, I often prefer the web version if you've planned ahead and you have a really big version that I can then load up and look at. So my personal preference is websites, but I hear people saying both, and I just think you need to have whichever one your industry or type of work seems to request. Darren, PDFs or websites?
Both. I feel the same way. Predominantly website. And then 'cause a lot of the jobs I've applied to and a lot of the things I've seen and heard is that they just ask for a portfolio and they don't necessarily specify one or the other. Then there's a group of them. They'll say you have to have an online portfolio. So it's best to be prepared. If we're the ones that are shopping. So if we're the ones that are shopping for a job, then we should be ready with either. And then that way you can respond to any and everything. I do recommend you have an online portfolio. I do recommend you password protect it because people will steal your content. And in certain parts of the world, it's huge to steal from portfolios. So password protect it.
And before we get Nick's thoughts, we've got a quick comment from Joel in the chat room who says, make sure to put metrics and measures for success. KPIs and numbers is how the rest of the world measures success. Otherwise, we're just telling stories with pretty pictures. Numbers make it real. I don't think I have any numbers for any projects I've ever done, but if you have them, definitely include them. Nick, something to add?
When I'm interviewing people, when I'm interviewing people, you can tell whether a junior, mid, senior, lead, you can tell by the way that they talk, by the way that they're referencing things. So when it comes to the portfolio, I'll be frank, I don't believe most of it in the same way that I don't believe CVs. I just don't, because you're trying to present this person. I don't want to see who you're trying to present. I want to see the real person, warts and all. And good recruitment, in my humble opinion, is asking the question, can this person do the job that I need them to do at the right level? And too many people are too hung up on, everyone's got to be a lead, everyone's got to be good looking, everyone's portfolio's got to be good looking. You know, it's like, no, we need more people to admit that I need help in certain areas. I am only a junior or a midweight, and this is me. And I've worked and hired people who are really straight up with that because that's easy to work with. I can transfer knowledge to them. You know where I'm coming from. I'm not going to, elaborate, but that's where I'm at with all of that.
Okay. Our next question comes from Charlene also, and it says, "Hey, Dr. Nick, any more UX psychology videos?" This one's for Nick, by the way.
Yeah, sorry, I've been a bad boy. I haven't done enough video recording. I did think tanks and then didn't do anything with them. I've got to do lots of stuff. Like you heard me say earlier in this evening's broadcast, because of what's happening to us, people like Darren, Debbie, and I are literally under assault by the design profession, basically.
Yes.
And we have been for years now. And you ask any true senior or lead, they're just genuinely unhappy. I genuinely can't get a job as a head of UX that pays anything worth it because it's either really low paid or there's an art director sitting in my spot. And it's ubiquitous around the world. Sorry, I'm getting a bit ranty. I'll be careful.
I was going to say, the question was, have you done any more videos on UX psychology?
Yeah, sorry.
Just want to ground you a little bit.
Needed to be said.
Thank you for bringing me that.
Needed to be said.
No, it's absolutely spot on, and I respect that. Thank you. I haven't done any videos because I don't want to give stuff away to those people free of charge. Like, if they want it, they're going to have to pay at conference or something. I don't want to arm people with free stuff, which is keeping me out of work. or making my life harder. So yes, more UX psychology videos are coming. I've got to think about when UX psychology, when I launched that video, I got such a big response from everybody. And what I was hoping to get a response from was psychology driven UX practitioners. What it's told me is there's a huge appetite to learn the whole thing, and there's stuff to do. Yes, there's more coming. I've got to decide whether I want to start building physical classrooms, whether to do them remotely, and lots of other things. The other thing to say is the way that UX is going currently is on a downhill trajectory, not an uphill trajectory. And UX psychology is getting further away. And I'm feeling more and more like a visionary when the world should be catching up to me and overtaking me. Right. I'm still a decade ahead of everybody. And it shouldn't be like this. And it can only get better if people start to understand that they're doing the wrong thing. It's not going to happen. Sorry. So no. Yeah. Yes, stay tuned. I'll do something.
You tell people they're doing the wrong thing, and then they say that you're a gatekeeper. You tell people they're doing the wrong thing, and they find fault with you instead of finding fault with somebody, like, for example, who will curate psychology stuff. They're not a psychologist, don't have a degree in psychology. All they did was go on Wikipedia, wherever, get something, and then get a book, and then everybody thinks that stuff's the best thing since sliced bread, and it's a farce. It's really sad. We should not be assaulted. We don't have to be put on a pedestal, but we definitely shouldn't be assaulted. And it's ridiculous.
Yes. And Scott says, "Are you the gatekeeper?" I think he's doing Ghostbusters there. I want to say the depressing thing for a moment to back up Nick's depressing thing, and that is if you look at the number of views videos on this channel get compared to the number of views videos on channels giving garbage information about UX get, our videos get sometimes a few hundred views, maybe more, maybe less. And then if you have a video that's like how to learn UX in negative 37 minutes and get a job yesterday, that's got 12,000 views. And I always wonder, first of all, are those views real? There are definitely a few channels that I've seen, and I don't really watch any of these videos, but I sometimes end up on the channels, and I go, I wonder if that's real or if they bought those followers. I wonder if that's organic. And there was a guy that I saw who tries to sell his own UX research courses, and I went to his YouTube channel, and he had, he'd been putting up some videos maybe over the course of maybe a year, and it looked like at one point his subscribership really jumped. And from then on, all of his videos got monster views, but all of his older videos didn't get monster views. And I said, that's really funny because the most watched video on this channel is episode 4. So I know I have real humans who are looking for specific topics that interest them when the 4th video I ever did is the most watched one because people want to go back to it. People want to go back to Joel Barr being on the show. He's here in the audience today. People want to go back to some of the other topics that we did. We've got organic people who's finding it in search and going, oh, that interests me. And I look at some of these people and I see, a squillion views on their video about here's how you do UX research. And I'm thinking, I'm not even sure this is real, but the problem is most people are going to fall for that as social proof. Wow, 12,000 people watched this video and only 300 watched Debbie's. Well, I guess this guy must be better in some way. And so every time YouTube sends me a survey as how happy are you as a creator? And how do you think YouTube cares about you as a creator? I just say, I don't understand why the charlatans out there are getting a squillion views. And in fact, I had a fight with one of them this weekend in my own YouTube comments, which he eventually deleted, but not before I screenshot it. And yeah, so he was a guy who has some YouTube channel, a guy or girl, I don't know gender, and they seem to mostly put up Figma videos, and came to my channel to try to win over my audience with whatever their comment was. And their comment was really insulting. And I said, if you're coming here to try to market to my users, I think you've just alienated all of them. So, I don't think that's going to work. And then he's just started writing really weird shit. And he ended up just fighting with me all weekend, and then it just disappeared. And I was like, well, I knew that was coming. I screenshot that. Lisa says, I completed 5 of the 7 UX courses Google created for Coursera. I didn't get much value out of them. Even I, as a beginner, know that they're not teaching actual UX. But unfortunately, Google has name recognition, and people assume it's credible. Yeah, we did a whole episode. What was that? Yep. Not 108. 108 yep. was What Isn't Design Thinking. We did an entire episode on the Google UX course with...
That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. With special guests Charlene and Madalena and King Joffrey. And that went well. So so I don't know what to tell everybody. I from all the people that claim to be interested in UX, and this is going to sound vain, and I hope people understand that this isn't vain, but for all the people who claim to be interested in UX, I don't understand why we don't have more activity on this channel.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm putting up 4 hours of content a week. I'm answering people's questions for free. I've got lessons up. I've got interviews with interesting people. I don't understand. Where is everybody? Tens of thousands of you are looking for work right now. Like, I kind of don't get it. I'm going to keep doing it because it's fun, but I kind of don't get it.
Yeah. But Debbie, you know what? You're not doing it when I say the right way, you're not doing it in the inauthentic way, which is the successful way. The way that you said, we all know people who learned to drive in a week, you know what I mean? And they turned out to be the worst drivers in the world, right? All that stuff. And it's the same thing. I think we should try an experiment, all 3 of us, right? For 1 week on all social media, we do it the modern way.
Thanks,
you have your thumbnail is an image of someone going,
right?
With the bold text, just all the clickbait, and play it that way. Make it all about yourself. Be an attention seeker. Do all the things that everybody else. Clickbait, all the naughties. Play the game and see what happens. Because Debbie, what's blown my mind is that all the content that you produce is top quality UX content. And I see your videos, and they've got hundreds of views, not thousands or tens of thousands of views.
Right.
And for me, that's like, why am I going to put the effort in? If Debbie's putting in so much effort, more than I ever would do, and she's not getting huge subscribership when she deserves to be millions of subscribers, or at least, lots, right? Something's very broken. And why are we going to work as hard as we are to give people something that they don't want to work hard at? What I'm saying is the real people you're attracting, and they know that this is a journey that they're going to get on, and they're going to build themselves up, leveling up all the way. The people that think they can just come in at the top are somewhere else. So I think you've probably got the quality audience, Debbie, but I'm with you. I wholly agree. It's soul destroying and wrong.
Yeah, I don't get it, and I don't have the heart to do the other stuff. And I also think that I don't think that better thumbnails would fix anything. I think that the people who don't want the quality, I thought about because YouTube's always like, you should do shorts, you should do better thumbnails, you should do, this. And I just feel like I'm not sure that that's going to do it. It reminds me of the early web design days in the mid-90s when we started having meta tags on pages where you could put search keywords into them, and everyone stuffed irrelevant search keywords in. And I had all these clients who told me to put write Madonna in my keywords and write sex in my keywords. And I'd be like, but you sell hammers? And they'd be like, yeah, but people are searching the web for Madonna and sex. So I want our store to come up. And then it's like, well, then no one's going to click on it because they were looking for sex. And I just feel like we're back there again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember when the bottom of the webpage, you'd have a whole bunch of white text on a white background with all those keywords in it?
Yeah.
Sorry, that was
terrible.
Yeah,
terrible stuff.
Remember those
GeoCities.
days, everybody? Yeah, I didn't do GeoCities, but there you go. So Argus
Imhotep.
is writing, the way YouTube algorithm behaves, Debbie's videos will be on everybody's feed in 5 years. Yeah, thanks.
That's the way they work.
We do have a question lingering that we forgot to get to, so I want to read it to you. And it's a little strange, but I hope you will go with it. Your thoughts on a fintech org that is following Fluent UI for revamping complex financial products, not doing any user research, not including user requirements. They follow what the PO and SMEs say. I quit that organization, by the way. What are your thoughts?
Well, you lost me at Fluent UI because that's not UX. So we don't, that's not on our radar. But when they don't want to pay attention to research, when they're not approaching things the right way, to step out, you did the right thing. And kudos to you for having the courage. Somebody told me once, it takes more courage to leave than to stay. So he did the right thing, and I hope you land somewhere great. But yeah, Fluent UI, I don't know one from the other, never will. You couldn't pay me to get into the coding side of things. I'm too busy taking care of what real UX is to pay attention to that stuff.
Nick, something to add?
I just had to Google it myself whilst Darren was answering. I had no idea either. It's a collection of tools by Microsoft. And I know some lovely people who work at Microsoft, so I can apologize in advance for what I'm about to say. Historically, UX and Microsoft are not the best bedfellows, shall we say. They've not done the best job of it. Clippy is a really big one, amongst others.
He's coming back.
Past.
Clippy's coming back.
We're going to have AI Clippy. I don't even want to know what happens. Yeah. By the way, anybody who's talking about doing anything UX without kind of talking to users and working their needs into some kind of solution ain't doing UX. So if we're focusing on these frameworky things, again, it's like it just seems so far wrong, so far off from what we actually do. It's
just X. You're going to be an X, not UX designer.
It's
you're going to be
barely
an X designer. Well, there
you're
will
going to
be
be
an
a designer.
There will be an experience.
Yeah.
Won't be a good one, but
that always brings me back to TuneSys can drive, just not very well, which is that's an old Saturday Night Live. Yeah, it's an old Saturday Night Live bit about the cat who could drive, but at the end of every sketch, he drives everyone off a cliff, and then they go, TuneSys can drive, just not very well.
Classic.
Yeah.
Classic stuff.
That's what I always think of when I hear that. Man, oh man.
There was something. Do I have time to mention something else I was going to?
Yeah, we've got time. Go for it. Yeah.
That thing. Two things. One is that thing about the whole algorithms and all that kind of thing. I found out about that firsthand. That when people started hearing about my podcast, I started getting contacted by these people on a regular basis. They've stopped recently. But we can give you clicks. Do you need clicks? Do you need likes? Do you need subscribers? And then you pay, and then all of a sudden all the numbers shoot up. And that's one of the reasons that some of these people look more popular than what they really are, because they have some kind of robots or whatever it is that goes out and will like your videos and will subscribe to your channels or like your posts and things like that. So this is happening, and folks don't realize that this is going on. The second thing that came to mind, and I said, no, get out of here. I want organic traffic.
Away, Satan.
I don't care how low the numbers are in comparison to some of these other folks. I'd rather truly help people and have people who really value what I'm doing have clicked on something than to get a bunch of these vanity metrics to make me look like I'm something that I'm not. I have nothing to do with that. And you can spot the people who do, because they have 10 billion likes, and then you listen to 3 minutes of what they're doing, if you can get that far, and it's puke worthy. There's no way in the world, on one hand, that many people would do that. But then again, when you start to talk to a lot of these people aren't looking for quality anyway. So in some cases where the numbers are not quite that astronomical, but they're like, one got 5,000 likes on something. He didn't pay for that. That's 5,000 gullible people. that like that. He didn't pay for that stuff. Then I had a woman, the second part I want to mention, someone reached out to me on LinkedIn. She said, hi, just so you know, I just wanted to introduce myself. I am a popular figure in social media when it comes to UX. And I want to know, are you ever looking for people to come on your show? I would love to come on your show and talk about what I'm doing. And I went, what? So as usual, what do? Look up their profile on LinkedIn.
For sure.
No experience in UX whatsoever. Learn from, a hole in the wall, so to speak, the equivalent thereof. No real look at their activities, no real presence, demonstrate no passion for the discipline whatsoever. But you want to come on my show, and the mere fact that you asked me to come on my show means you haven't paid any attention to what I say and do. Because people have basically hung me from Streamline. I've been tarred and feathered virtually numerous times, and you want to come on my show? You don't know who I am, obviously, because I don't want, and you would know that I want nothing to do with you. So click.
Yeah, I think that quote that Larry just
Yes.
said is Groucho Marx.
Yes.
I'm not sure. It probably wasn't Harpo. He didn't talk. I wouldn't want to be a member of a club that would have me as a member. That would be
Yep.
Julius Groucho Marx.
Yep.
There's some weird latter-day phenomenon that we're too old for, if you know what I mean. But the younger generations who've grown up in this social media world, that fame and celebrity is so divorced from ability and achievements that people are all cool with doing stuff without any of the legwork or any of the thing. Like my 9-year-old son wants to do a YouTube channel. I'm like, but dude, you need a skill to you can't just be a celebrity. Maybe you can, but that's not really it. You need a skill. You need to be playing guitar, playing drums, playing a game, doing what you're doing. I've got friends' dads who are supporting their kids by taking all these glamorous pictures of their kids who look like rock stars who have done nothing. And that's not good for mental health at all.
No, it's not.
I don't need to tell you that, but if you need to know, if your well-being is reliant on what other people think about you, that really ends badly.
Yes.
100% of the time.
Bingo.
Don't do it.
You just made me think of something. I shared this on LinkedIn. Of course, it only got like 5 likes. But it was Chris Rock, the comedian Chris Rock, was talking to another actor, and I can't remember who the actor was. And they were talking about this great show that they did and all the fantastic work that went into it. And it was canceled. It never did air. And he was just so floored and disappointed because it was well produced. It was well filmed. It was well written. But it didn't get anywhere. And Chris Rock told him, he tried to comfort him. He said, you know what? He said, you just got it. One thing you need to know. Yeah, you did do good work. I saw part of it. It was great work. But you need to know one thing. People don't want quality anymore. And that was like the end of it. It's just amazing.
I'm having trouble remembering the name of it. There's a TV show that was a pilot episode that was shot. It's on YouTube. It's going to take me a moment to remember the name. It was written by Conan O'Brien and Robert Smigel. And Robert Smigel, longtime Saturday Night Live writer. Some of you know him as Triumph, the insult comic dog. They wrote a pilot. They got Adam West to star in it. Adam West, the old Batman. The show is hilarious. It's called Look Well. So there's one episode of it. It's on YouTube. You can find it. It's called Look Well, LOOKWELL. And this is a show that never got picked up and never went to air. It's got only the pilot episode. And the concept is Adam West used to play a TV detective. He's a washed up actor who was a TV detective. But because he was a TV detective, and this is actually accidentally relevant to our world, because he was a TV detective, he thinks he's a good detective in real life. And so every time there's crime happening in his area, he thinks he needs to show up to the police precinct and help out the cops and the detectives with the crime. But of course, he's botching everything. He's doing a terrible job. And the other problem is because he's a washed up actor, he's like, now I'm going to go undercover at the racetrack. And he shows up in like what Snoopy would wear when he thinks he's a flying ace. Like he shows up in like a scarf and things that race car drivers don't wear, but he's like, okay, you know, I'm acting. And he brings all of his acting students with him. And it was really so good, and it never got picked up. And you can find it on YouTube, and it's called Look Well, and you will die that there isn't a second episode. Larry says, in reference to using trending keywords to drive traffic to your site, make the person responsible for driving traffic to the site also responsible for the conversion rate. And Larry's quoting another TV commercial. He says, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. Yeah, same kind of thing. We do have one more question. I don't want to forget about our one more question. And Lisa asked a question before, and now we've got Lisa's significant other named Jeff. And Jeff says, hi, I'm Lisa's significant other. Can you describe how UX should positively impact and streamline the software development process? He's a software developer. What are the UX deliverables that optimize development? Who wants to speak to what we do that helps developers optimize what they're doing? I have about 3 hours on that topic, so I'll let y'all go first.
Yeah.
You going first?
Nick.
I'll dive in.
Go on then. Go on.
I just think about something that Dr. Nick said earlier. I am going to develop relationships on that team because that's going to be critical. I am going to make sure that I understand what it is that we are working on. What are we trying to develop? What's the triptych for this solution? I'm going to make sure that I understand everything that we're working on. And then the deliverables, again, will vary. They will vary from organization to organization, from team to team, from solution to solution. But do they need wireframes? Some folks don't work with wireframes anymore. I know organizations that go straight to a clickable prototype, and they'd rather see that. They don't want to see wireframes. They don't want to see annotated wireframes. So one of the deliverables in some way, form, or fashion is going to be one or more of those things from that perspective. You may or may not have personas. Again, it depends upon the organization. Me, individually, if the team doesn't need or want personas, I still create them because I still want them in my head. I still want to look at scenarios. I still want to consider scenarios from my perspective. You may or may not have to put together journey maps or experience maps or user flows or wire flows. You may or may not. It's sort of like the question we talked about earlier. What are we trying to accomplish? And then you make a determination. You have a toolbox, and my toolbox is pretty replete, but I may only need 12 things. So I want to carefully select the things out of my toolbox that are going to be cost effective, that are going to bring value, that are going to drive communication. And most importantly, what does my team need to accomplish their job? What do they need from me? As opposed to just going and flexing your UX muscles and just doing something because you can or because you have time. So it depends on, it's that it depends thing all over again. I can do anything, but the question is, should I? And then I want to find out what, and then I want to deliver that. That's it.
All right, Nick?
From your software engineering perspective, the value that UX brings, it means by the time that you are writing or developing a user story that somebody has written for you, that you're doing that with confidence. Not that you wouldn't do it before. It means that we're building the right thing. What UX does in terms of deliverables at your end of things, if you know what I mean, is typically the journey maps and all that stuff. Yes, it's useful and gives you context of some of the functions or the things that you're building. But actually, I think probably the prototype that is tested and iterated is probably where you get the most value, because you get to see what we need built. And you get to understand, if you want to, the context around how we understood that, if you know what I mean. But otherwise, it really is, this is what the users this is how it works with users, and this is the way we need it to work with users. So this is why you've got user story A, B, and C, if you know what I mean. But I mean, the best thing I could say to you is if you get the opportunity, go and participate in a user research session or watch video back again, and you'll get a real feel very quickly in like 5-10 minutes as to the value to the product team or the service team, and then how that effectively percolates down to what you're doing. Because the product team and the dev team are whether you're doing dual or tri-track, they're inherently linked. It's just you're further down the process than we are. We're right at the front of it. So what we're doing is effectively not pathfinding. We're kind of wayfinding for the product or service, if you know what I mean, so that what you're building is the right thing. I hope that makes some kind of sense.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with that, but I'm going to go in a different direction. And I'm going to say, how nice for you to drop by and ask how I can optimize your work. But I kind of wish you had asked what we can do together more as a team. Because what I'm finding is that when I go out and speak to engineering conferences, I always ask the audience, virtually or room full of people, I say, okay, engineers, hands up. How many of you have been coding something or working on something and you knew that when this went out to the customer, it was going to be garbage. It was going to be wrong for them. It was going to have to be fixed later. It was substandard. It wasn't going to deliver customer value. Whatever. I have a much shorter way of saying that when I do the slide. Every hand in the room goes up. Everybody knows that they are coding something that is likely to not have value for the customer. Now, if we wind that back, what happened? Why are we doing that? And what is going on in so-called agile that we can't even stand up and stop the train and say, wait a minute, does this have value to the customer? I don't think this has value to the customer. So the problem is that while you're waiting for me to give you some sort of magic deliverable that optimizes your work is mostly not optimized because of things that right now I can't control. I cannot control a culture that wants to not be agile and not stop the agile train when we are building garbage. I cannot control a culture who thinks that sprint goals are that we should be building what we believe has value for the customer, and we'll figure out later if it has value to the customer. There's nothing agile or lean about these sprint goals. There's nothing agile or lean about taking guesses that somebody has about what customers need and having you work 4, 6, 8, 10 weeks on building them only to find out later, was it? Wow, that's slow motion. Wow, that's reactive. Wow, that's not agile or lean. So while you're waiting for the magical piece of paper from me or the screen sketch or the whatever it is that's going to optimize your world is not unoptimized because of something I didn't do. I didn't break what's going on in engineering. If you want to see your work be more optimized, you have to stand with us because very often we're not allowed to do our best work. We're told, UX, you guys make things pretty, so we'll give you a day or two. Make some screens that Jeff can build and get out to the customer. And then after Jeff builds them and we QA them, we'll learn later when marketing runs a survey if they were any good. Wow, that's months and months and months of work. All because we didn't want to take the time up front to do some research. Once upon a time, we believed in research and development. Now someone read the Lean Startup book, which was meant for two dickheads in a garage in California, and they thought that's what we have to do. So while you're waiting for me to optimize your process, I would instead want you to stand with me and fight for more UX people on the team. Stop putting 1/3 of me on the team while you're waiting for the magical document that optimizes you. I can't do that at 10 hours a week. Fight for more people to be on the team. Fight for us to be utilized correctly. That's Agile Manifesto Principle number 5. You should care for that. Jeff says, I've been doing dev for 23 years. I've been on one team with UX and it was really a UI designer. I want to change that. I'm 100% on board with bringing UX to the industry. So these are the things that you have to stand up and say to people. My new talk that I've been doing all year is for engineers. It's called Improving Agility by Using Customers' Definitions of Quality and Done. And that is where we start. I've got hours on this stuff. And the bottom line is, UX cannot optimize engineering while we're being blocked. And very often we're being blocked by people who think that we just make pretty stuff and we just put a checkbox where they tell us to put a checkbox, and we make pretty wireframes. And I'm trying to explain that we are business intelligence and we are risk mitigation. There should be a lot more of us on the team. So Jeff, I would say watch episode 116. Everybody drink when I say watch episode 116. Because I say that all the time. Thank you, Nick. And it's a long one. You can watch it on 2X, but that's what has to happen in Agile and in UX. And for starters, engineering has to stop trying to control UX. Engineering doesn't control product. They don't control marketing. They don't control business strategists. Engineering has to stop telling us what we can do and in what amount of time. But I have 2.5 hours of suggestions on how we fix this. And the problem is there isn't the magical deliverable that will optimize engineering's work if we're all building the thing that has no value to the customer. Your main optimization is going to come from better work done earlier in the planning and in research, where I can save you all kinds of time and money when I go, oh, you know what? Your customers don't want that. Not even close. Jeff says, agreed. More and more time, too few hours is as bad as too many people. Yeah, so I appreciate your question about like, what can we deliver to you? But like, that is so low on my list, because at every job I've ever had, maybe obviously not the new one I'm in now, but in every job I've ever had where I've been the worker bee, I haven't been able to do my best work. I've barely been given more than 2 days to do the least work. Very often at these companies, I'm told, just rip off the competitor. We like what they're doing. Why don't you just wireframe something like that? You know, that's not UX. That's certainly not innovation. All y'all who keep saying, oh, we have to be so innovative and run these workshops. Where's our innovations? And then, Deb, go rip off our competitor. Not innovative. So I wish that people just heard themselves. And I wish that there were accountability. I think ultimately, if there were accountability for any of this, we would see a huge change in UX immediately. UX would get time, we would get budget, we would get people. We wouldn't be forced to do our work in design by committee workshops, because someone would be held accountable for what that workshop delivered and how that ended up with the customer. So these are all of the problems put together. Thanks. These are all the problems put together. You can see them. Thank you. You can see them at the beginning of episode 115 on a giant slide, but this is the problem. And I think if we don't get more product and engineers and other people standing up with us, then as Nick said earlier, they're just gonna get rid of UX. UX is just going to turn into production design. UX is going to be, hey, look for someone who knows how to use Figma and can do what the product manager says. Or look for someone who is good at Sketch, 3+ years of Sketch, and can do what the business analyst overwrote into the requirements. I had a friend of the show consider me for a job at her company, obviously a very preliminary consideration, and she was messaging me on LinkedIn, and it was a UX designer job, and of course I can do UX design. And she said, well, we really need people who can use Figma. And I said, well, I assume I can learn Figma in a half a day. And she's like, no, it's really important that people know Figma. And I'm like, but I'm sure I can learn Figma in a half a day. And ultimately she assumed, and possibly correctly, that they weren't even going to consider me because I wouldn't be able to show any Figma stuff in my portfolio. Once we are assessing people who are supposed to have scientific knowledge and scientific processes by whether or not they know the flavor of the month software, we're not even close. And that's what I say in my HR training. I say, you are so busy trying to assess me for whether or not I'm a sculptor. And the problem is you're missing the magic I can actually create. I'll try to step off the soapbox. Nick.
No, I forgot what I was going to say. It's gone. Don't worry. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat comments. Maggie says, we need to be innovative, then proceeds to do the same as competitor. Oh man, I'm reliving some things. Scott says, run a workshop and do what the competition is doing. Scott says, my next new YouTube short should be 2 simple tricks to become a UX guru. Lisa says,
Yeah.
it seems like whoever's in charge of hiring at most orgs doesn't value UX and they expect developers to do UX tasks. Very true. Maggie says, I've seen more product managers do UX tasks, not engineers. Scott is joking, you practically need a PhD to operate Figma.
Oh, that was what I was going to say. Sorry. Okay, if we talk about Figma very briefly, right? Ask these people, why are you doing a medium or a high fidelity job on this? What is it that needs that level of fidelity? And they'll give you a standard stock answer. Oh, but it's closer to the real world, therefore it's got to have better. It's going to be better. They don't even know the word about validity, but that's what they're alluding to. Lots of people using Figma and very low interactive design functionality with no real rationale for doing that. And if they do, then fine, that's great. I can't argue. But they're not. They're just drawing pictures. Big problem that. Also, wouldn't you rather draw more pictures faster in black and white? Isn't that a better plan if it doesn't change anything?
No, we don't want to be efficient. Stop that.
I know, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Scott says, I could totally kill it with smart-ass YouTube shorts that are bait and switches that seem like clickbait and then you dump in real knowledge. Sarcasm works, in my opinion. You know, I thought about that and then I thought that's just not who I am and it's not who I want to be. I don't want to have to bait and switch people to actually care about doing UX well. They're not going to stay on my channel.
Yeah.
If they don't care about doing UX well, they're not going to, they can stay for the clickbait and then they're not going to stay for the... They're not going to stay for the actual content. Nick.
I have a question for everybody watching, for Debbie, for Darren. This is probably homework rather than to be discussed now. When I saw this coming 4 or 5 years ago, I did the UX psychology thing by way of saying, if you want to do this stupid non-user-centric UX, bye-bye, because I'm going to go this way over here, right? UX psychology is not the right vehicle to do that. The question for you guys is, if UX UI or UX just is going to become this automated, not user-centric, foreign thing that none of us have got skills to do, if you know what I mean, right? If we lose UX altogether, which we're pretty much there, what can we call the new UX?
Oh, I'm already working on that.
How can we bring UX?
We did that already on this channel.
Okay.
Yeah, we did a brainstorm session on if we're going to lose UX to production design, what should our jobs be called? We did a live brainstorm and we did a Miro board, and let me go look up the Miro board and tell you how that ended up, because people had some really interesting ideas. Now, of course, my favorite idea was strategic strategy strategist. That's what I wanted my name to be, because I thought that because I get what I told everybody was, let's try to brainstorm terms that the visual designers won't be able to hijack later. And a lot of us said, well, strategy, something about strategy or strategic, because very often those people aren't strategic and it would be hard for them to show that they are. So we ended up playing with words, and I went with strategic strategy strategist. But the actual end, in the end, the most popular term on the page was customer solutions architect. That's what the people who joined in live that day thought, that obviously that doesn't exactly fit a researcher. That would be, so we were looking at what could replace something like UX designer, because UX is kind of lost to production design. And of course, designer just hits that home run out of the park saying we are artsy. We're artsy fartsy hipsters, and we're here to make it blue or slightly less blue. So the winners were customer solutions architect, customer-centric architect. I liked this one. Omni-channel CX analyst, human behavior specialist, experience strategist, and we had a few more that got some votes. But we had a big board with all different ideas. We started with words, and then we started putting the words together into titles. I think it's still up at deltacx.link/Miro, M-I-R-O. So you can check out the board there. But that's where we went.
Okay.
Cool. I'll go check it out.
Interesting concept.
Because we're going to need one soon.
Yeah, I was talking to Lee Andres, I like to say, but she says Lee Andres. And she said that, if we all push hard enough, we could create a new labor category where product designer and UX designer end up meaning basically production designer. You want wireframes in a day? This person will give you wireframes in a day. Research, probably don't need it. Testing, probably don't need it. Just go with genius design. But then what about the other people who, if you read my article called The Coming Correction and Shift in CX and UX, I call it Job A and Job B, and I call Job B the children of Don Norman, and Job A is all of the production design. Nick says, what about design producer? Whenever I've seen design producer, that person was usually some sort of project manager. And so I don't think producer is going to make sense. Lisa says, customer experience strategist. Jeff says, functional designer. The customer yields functional design. No, that doesn't sound right to me at all. Larry says the best UX is invisible. Should we be called invisible designers? Yeah. So I think that UX ghosts, Larry says. Yeah, I'm feeling it. Yeah. So my challenge to everybody was words that the typical UI designer would have a hard time proving they've done. Because, we called ourselves UX designers. They say, I'm a UX designer. And nobody can prove they're not. And so I think if we have strategist or something like that, or strategic in there, I think that's going to help. But it's still something that we have to figure out. But I do think it is a separate job. And I think the people, especially all these people coming out of boot camps, not everyone, but many coming out of boot camps, might be very happy to get a job where they do pretty screens and a couple of Figma prototypes and all of that. But some people are going into boot camps and other schools saying, I have to make change. I have to create change. I have to use critical thinking. I have to understand the problem. I have to solve the problem. Those are job B, children of Don Norman, and it's not the same job. It's not the same job. It's why the three of us have a hard time finding a job, because we want job B, and almost everything out there right now wants job A. They want 3 years of Figma, likes to make wireframes, won't ask too many questions.
You just made
Or
me think about
expose the shocking ways of working that are currently underway. That's the other one.
Yeah.
We are threats to empires that are being built wrongly.
I had an experience not too long ago where I was a candidate for a UX manager job, and the thing we talked before, I was selling myself short for years, settling for senior jobs. And why am I doing that? Let's shoot higher. Let's do lead. Let's do principal. Let's do manager. Let's do director. That's where I need to be. That's where I should be. I've been there once before, walked away. Let's go back there. And was a candidate for a job. Won't say the company name. It was a UX manager gig. And the person that interviewed me said, man, I'm impressed with this guy. I really like him. I think he could do this job in his sleep. But I don't think he'll stay. I think he'll be bored. I'm going, are you kidding me? And they really didn't want to pay me market value for UX manager. That's what it really turned out to be. And they were satisfied to hire somebody who had a 10th of my experience into the same exact role. And I told the recruiter, I've made a lot of recruiter friends in the last year. And I told her, you really don't want to pay, but the difference between the salary that I wanted, and it was realistic, and it was doable for that company. The difference between the salary you were going to pay me and the salary that you were going to pay that other individual, that person is going to cost you the money that you didn't want to pay me. You're better off paying me and then making money, have the needle go forward to pay somebody like me or Dr. Nick or Debbie, have the needle go forward, because we're going to drive value instead of costing you money because they're spitballing, doing things wrong. The other thing that was mentioned earlier, you're not disseminating any information to help anybody behind you grow. It's going to cost you in the tens, if not the hundreds of thousands. And it really, when it gets to the work, it could cost you millions. Why would you want somebody for $20,000 less when they're going to cost you another 50, 60 at least? So pretty sad stuff. But that's part of what's happening.
But they just don't know, Darren.
Yeah.
They just don't know. This is the problem. If they knew that you could spend $30,000 to $40,000 or pounds a year and get a multiplier in millions off of that tiny ROI, that tiny investment, everyone would do it. We'd all have jobs. It wouldn't be a problem. It's just they don't know. And senior leadership teams and C levels are all hiring art and creative directors thinking that UX is a visual production designy type thing. And they're going to have to lose market share. They're going to have to learn the hard way before there's a sea change, a revolution, so that people like us are actually valued, because they don't know what we can do. I feel like a superhero that's like nailed to the floor or something, right? I'm stuck. I can't do my magic. It sucks. And when I am allowed to do my magic, like on my current gig, the project manager is an amazing individual who has gate-kept for me and allowed me to do my stuff. And we're doing amazing, amazing work. But that's when you're allowed to do it. Most times you're not allowed to, and it's a fight or a negotiation.
No. Yep. And I'm sorry we're over time. I know Nick's got to go and I've got to go, so we're going to have to wind down the show. But as you can see, even 2 hours isn't enough for us. Thanks to everybody who joined and left positive comments. And Larry says, the question I ask is, how much would you pay for a winning lottery ticket? Yeah, hire Larry Marine and you've just bought a winning lottery ticket. It's a
metaphor.
It's true. It is true. So anyway, thanks so much to Darren and Dr. Nick. Give a quick sign-off message, each of you. Where can people find you and follow you, Darren?
Hi, folks. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on the World of UX podcast with Darren Hood. Find it anywhere podcasts are available. And I will leave it at that today because I want more people to tap into the podcast. All
right. Nick, where do we find you?
You find me on LinkedIn. Usually I'm pretty noisy there. I go in phases. But go listen to Darren's podcast, UX Uncensored. Sorry, I'm pointing the wrong way. Go talk Darren's UX Uncensored podcast, because Darren and Debbie, they put out the good stuff.
Thank you to Argus for the donation. Very, very sweet. Thank you. Thank you. Follow these people, everybody. They're super. Now, remember, they do this once a month with me. They're going to be back on September 14th. So you can mark your calendars. You can also follow our calendar, deltacx.link/events. That will dump you on a Google Calendar with all of the upcoming events and live streams that we're doing here. So if you're ever wondering what we're doing, it's that. Just go find that out. If you'd like to ask a question for next week ahead of time, deltacx.link/ask. Don't forget the free HR training that I'm hoping will help fix some of our jobs. Share that out with all the stupid, crappy job requests that you get. And of course, please enter the giveaway. If you live somewhere where Italian food can be mailed, our giveaway will be me sending you a giant box of local Italian goodies. deltacx.link/giveaway. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Children, ask your parents before dialing. And just please only enter once. So great. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you, I think, Friday for the reaction stream. I don't think I've got anything happening before then. So have a good week. Wear 14 masks. And I'll catch everybody soon. Thanks again, everybody. Bye. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are